This is Dave Toronto. The name of this podcast is called Cut Through the Noise. The intention of the podcast is to provide common sense perspectives and conversations about things like people, business, communication, and a little bit of life. I'll be doing most of them on my own and occasionally bringing on guests like clients and people in my network. So I look forward to doing it. Hope you enjoy it. And if you do, please subscribe and be sure to share with your friends. I had a sales manager call me the other day for some help to do some training with his team, but the thing that he wants to work on the most is helping his people use the phone. And what he said is, I can't seem to get them to dial it. They're just not dialing the phone anymore. And generally speaking, when somebody says this to me, when I get in front of their salespeople, what the salespeople always say is, well, no one answers their phones anymore. So you've got one dynamic where the manager says they won't dial, and you've got salespeople saying, well, they won't answer. And round we go. My question is picking up the phone to dial or picking up the phone to answer seriously the problem? I don't think so. You know what I think the real problem is we actually believe these excuses. We actually believe that we can't get people to dial, and people actually believe no one's going to answer. That's the problem, is we're choosing to believe it. But you know what? It's on the manager to fix it. Ultimately, both salesperson and manager has to fix it. But if the managers are responsible, the managers are responsible for the production of their sales teams. And if the manager can't develop a team that produces and that gets comfortable with the phone, the manager's not going to be around anymore. We can only blame inept salespeople for so long. And I say that in quotes. There's way too much blame on the salesperson. We can only fire so many of them. We can only let so many of them quit before the finger comes back on us, because it's on us. We're the ones who hire them. We're the ones who choose to keep them. And we're the ones who are likely not developing them. It's not the salespeople. It's the manager. It's the manager. So we have to take responsibility. So we all get into sales management for different reasons. Some of us get into sales management because we were great at sales and we get promoted. Others get transferred from a different department, maybe because they were good with people. They've been assigned to manage the sales team. Some have experience, some don't. Some are hired from outside the company, some are hired from inside the company. Some people are managing sales teams because they're friends with the boss or the owner, or they're a relative, and all of a sudden they've been assigned as the sales manager. But in the end, it doesn't matter how you got there. The only thing that matters is that you have what it takes to develop your people to be comfortable on the phone. Most sales managers are well-intentioned. There's some really, really good ones out there. Really good ones. But I actually believe there's more that aren't good. And it's the ones that aren't good that are the most challenging. Those are the most challenging, because a lot of them don't know they're not good, or they're not willing to admit it. They're not willing, like the guy who called me the other day, at least is willing to ask for help. He doesn't let his ego get in the way. He doesn't feel like it's a strike against him to ask for an outside support. But there are a lot of sales managers out there, they'd never call an outsider for help because they think it exposes them. They think, well, that's what they're paying me to do. If I call anyone for help, it's going to expose me. That's not good. Those are the managers that are in trouble. But here's the thing. It's on us as managers, and this message is for managers. And you're not going to like me by the end of this podcast, so feel free to click it off now. But it's on us to fix it. And the first thing we need to do is look in the mirror, and if what we're doing isn't working, we got to admit it. If we don't have a sales team that's comfortable using the phone, then that's on us to help. It's on us to show them how to be comfortable. It's on us to coach them on how to be comfortable. And if we can't do it, it's on us to move them out. But I question whether or not we're doing everything it takes. There are a lot of sales managers out there that are defeating their people on the phone because some of them are shaming their people into making calls that they're not ready to make. I've had managers not count business because the business didn't come in via cold call.
I've had managers say to me, well, yeah, I know they closed that deal, but I gave them that deal. Or that was an account that we've had for years that went dormant. They just brought it back to life. It doesn't count. They didn't find it on their own. Or that piece of business came in. That was referred by one of their friends. That was a call in. They closed. They didn't find it. It wasn't a cold call. And they dismiss all of that stuff because they believe fundamentally that the only sale can be made, the only true salesperson is a salesperson that can find business via cold call. And it's ridiculous, but it happens. The other side to that is you've got managers that just don't know how to do the job. Many have not sold in years. Some have never sold. Many will admit to me in private that they're not comfortable making calls. Many have not been in front of clients in a long time. They're not client-facing sales managers. They're afraid to make a call. They're just as awkward on a call. They don't know how to be effective on the phones. They've been out of the game too long. They're too rusty. And that inherently is a problem. And when you're in that situation, or in either situation, whether you've done it or not done it, oftentimes the only strategy, way too often, is just get on the phones. And that's the strategy for developing business. Just put your people on the phones. Then when you put people on the phones that aren't ready to be on the phones and don't understand how to be effective on the phones, the whole initiative devolves. The stat I looked up right before I started talking and Googled it, and go Google it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I typed in call effectiveness. In this case, I typed in cold call effectiveness. And the number 2.5% is what appeared first in the search string. 2.5% of cold calls are effective. And I'm not suggesting that using the phone is a cold call thing, but the reality is in most companies, when people hear I got to dial the phone more, or managers are telling their people to dial the phone more, they automatically assume cold call. They make it cold just because of the way they're interpreting the message or delivering the message. They make the whole phone thing cold. And you're not going to increase your odds by making it a cold effort. And even if it's just mentally a cold effort, you're not going to increase your odds. We've got to stop with this nonsense. And even if you're great at cold calling, even if you have no fear in the world of anyone being mean to you or rude to you or hanging up on you, even those people do not have high close percentages. It is not the path to take. It is a way to take, but it is not the way to take. So we'll talk a little bit about cold calling later and how to use it more effectively. But let's just look at this now and say, what do we do about it? How, as a manager, can I be okay saying, or how can I ever accept the idea that I can't get my people to pick up the phone? That's kind of like a baseball coach accepting that a batter I can't get the batter to pick up the bat. I mean, how could you ever hear a baseball coach say that? I can't get the batters to pick up the bat. They just don't want to pick up the bat. No, it's never going to happen. Now, there are batters that lose their confidence. There are batters that would prefer not to face certain pitchers. There are batters that get into slumps. So what does the coach do? They get in the cage with them and they practice and they help them make adjustments and tweaks and they help build their confidence back. They don't allow them to put the bat down. They don't allow them to avoid the batter's box. They put them back in and they get in the mix with them and they show them how to be more effective. That's what we have to do as sales managers. Who's in charge here? You or them? You're running this popsicle stand. You're the biggest part of the problem. You've got to be honest with yourself, admit when things aren't working, and take responsibility for fixing it. So let me give you a few things to think about. There's actually 4 things I'm going to give you to think about. You probably know all of it now. But I want you to think about it after I go through it and really consider, are you doing all this stuff right? Are you doing all this stuff consistently? Because it might help with this whole problem of not being able to get your people to be effective on the phone. So the first thing we really need to consider, and it's higher level, but we have to establish buy-in. Do your people understand the big picture? They understand how they fit into the big picture as a sales professional inside of your company. Do they understand how they impact the big picture? And do they understand how using the phone is a required part of the job? And why? It's not because we're trying to make things hard on them. We use the phone to initiate relationships, to progress relationships, to maintain communication with people, to get in front of people. That's what the job is. Unless you work for a company where the phone just rings and business comes to you, that's not sales, that's order taking. But in most sales environments, true sales environments, we hire salespeople to create opportunity. And one of the tools that we use to create opportunity with other people is the telephone. And it doesn't have to be cold, like I said earlier. So we have to establish buy-in. Do your people understand that the phone is a required tool, first and foremost? Now, if they say no, well, you don't keep those people. If they say yes, well, the second thing you have to do is hold them accountable. And this is quite frankly where the rubber meets the road. Accountability is a crazy topic for so many people. You get some that treat accountability like they abuse their people. It's punitive. It's micromanagement. It defeats everything because it's this negative thing. And then you've got others that talk about accountability and they have a healthier approach to it, but they just don't do it. They just say, I'm going to hold you accountable, and they forget about it. Neither approach is going to make your person or your people more effective on the phone. Telling them that you're going to hold them accountable and then abusing them is not going to make them want to use the phone more. And then telling them that you're going to hold them accountable and then never holding them accountable is not going to make them better, because they're just not going to do it because they know they can get away with not doing it. Holding them accountable to what, though? Are you holding them accountable to things that matter, like conversations? If you're going to use the phone, your job is to get into conversations with people. Good, productive, meaningful conversations with people. That's what I'm going to hold you accountable to. I don't really care about how many times you dial the damn thing or how many minutes you're logging on the phone. I've worked with people over the years that dial their phone, their home phone, over and over again. I worked with a manager once, and she would call her own house and leave messages on her own phone because the company had a number of dials number and then a number of minutes number. And so she would just call and log dials and minutes on her own phone. And this woman managed a team, which was sucking wind, by the way. It's just amazing that if we hold people accountable to the wrong stuff and we don't get into the meat of who you having conversations with, how many and what was the quality, and holding them accountable to that, that's what matters. The other stuff doesn't matter. How many emails you sent? I mean, what are we talking about? How many people did you talk to and who were they? And let's break down those conversations to see if we could help you make them more effective. The third thing if we want them to have effective conversations, the third thing a smart sales manager is looking at is just the confidence and conviction that their people have in what they're saying. The message. And by the way, the message is going to vary from person to person. Every person we call doesn't have to be a cold prospect. But what we say to a cold prospect is a little bit different than what we would say to an existing client or a referral source or somebody in our network, maybe from a previous colleague from another company or somebody we went to college with. There are reasons to make phone calls to other people. There's so many people that we could be calling and we should be calling that aren't cold, and we could do a better job honing our message and being more effective with them. A smart sales manager is demonstrating how to talk to people by phone in many different ways, many different messages. They're helping their people develop a message and a mindset that's rooted in conviction. And the last thing that a smart sales manager needs to look at is all of the stuff that mentally gets in the way of a person wanting to dial the phone, which is all of the negative things that we can typically encounter if we're not ready. Like if we don't expect somebody to hang up and then they hang up on us and we take it personally, we might not want to dial again. Or if somebody's rude to us, we need to hold people accountable and help them get their heads around the fact that not everything's going to feel good. We've got to hold them accountable to uncomfortable conversations as well. We've got to let them know what kinds of uncomfortable responses they might encounter so that when they experience those things, they don't run from them. They actually embrace them. We've got to teach them to embrace what's uncomfortable so that they learn to tolerate it and they learn to work through it. I look at it with kids' sports. My daughter's been in a skills clinic for basketball for the last few weeks, and she's a right-handed dribbler and shooter. But over the last few weeks, and especially last night, there were so many left-handed shooting drills and dribbling drills. And I see her level of confidence. She's uncomfortable, more uncomfortable a few weeks ago than she was last night. But by the end of practice, her level of confidence is significantly higher than it was when she first started. She is going to be a much better ball player because she's learned to develop confidence with her left hand, which was uncomfortable. She can actually face a defender with her left hand now, but couldn't a few weeks ago. We've got to do the same thing with our salespeople. We've got to teach them to be comfortable and confident on the phone, even if the other person on the phone isn't wanting us there. You're more likely to encounter that if you treat it as a cold call, but a smart sales manager is prepping their people to deal with that stuff. And if you don't know how to do it, call me or call somebody like me to help you. Set your pride aside. Not all of you you don't have to have every answer, but you got to do something about it. I talked to you about earlier about the whole the real problem is that we believe our own nonsense, which is I can't get people to pick up the phone, and I can't get my people to pick up a phone, and they can't get their prospects to answer the phone. But we're in 2019, and you know as well as I that everybody knows how to dial a phone. Everybody knows how to answer the phone. Everyone knows how to talk on the phone. I mean, you cannot go anywhere without seeing it. I see people picking up their phone in church. I see people at the gym on the treadmills talking on the phone, in line at the supermarket talking on the phone, in restroom stalls talking on the phone, in movie theaters. I see people picking up phones and dialing phones during business meetings, excusing themselves because they got to take that call. Everyone's dialing, everyone's answering. But when it comes to a sales environment, that's the excuse I get from the managers, is I can't get my people to dial and I can't get my people to answer from the salespeople. What, are you serious? It's not that. It's how you're thinking about it. That's the problem. It's how well prepared you are. That's the problem. That's what we got to be working on. Am I treating it as a cold initiative, or am I warming it up? Those are the things that smart managers are dealing with. That's what we're doing. Here's the bottom line. The people that sell the most are familiar to their audience. One of the ways to get familiar is to be comfortable using the phone. Use that phone to establish a network and maintain a network. When people are familiar with us and they become comfortable with us, more opportunity opens up for us. Smart salespeople recognize it. The other thing they do right out of the gate, especially today, it's 2019, is they get cell phone numbers for everybody that they choose to add to their contact list. And to this day, I do not have a client that is not willing to respond to a cell phone call or a text. We can do that. Everybody can do it. Part of it is on us to develop familiarity. It is on us to access people, not only at their desks, but on their cell phones. Everyone's talking on these phones. There's no reason to avoid them. Us avoiding them is costing us money, and it's costing us credibility. If you need help, call us. I'm happy to help you. Don't worry about it. No one's going to laugh at you. This is a problem everywhere. It doesn't have to be, and it's fixable. But it's on you to stay on top of it. It's on you to acknowledge it, and it's on you to help people work through it. So I'm hoping you're listening, sales managers. It is your responsibility, and I'm here if you need some help. We'll talk to you next Tuesday.